So we have come to grammar lesson 10 where we discuss modal verbs, and I told you last time when we did future simple tense that because it's the future there are many possibilities. It's not finished, it's something that's going to happen. So there are other ways of thinking about it or speaking about it. It might not take place, we may not be sure, or it might be something that you have to do, right? So all these dimensions of meaning can be expressed by changing the auxiliary verb, the helping verb. The normal one is will. That is what I taught you last time. I will come. But there are other helping verbs which can replace will. You can only use one auxiliary verb. I mean, generally, that's how it's done. And that can change the meaning. Right, so today we'll discuss a few of those which might become very useful to you when you want to express the nuances, the little changes in the future. For example, you can speak about the necessity for it, that you don't have a choice. For example, I will go to Candy, something that you will definitely do. But if you say I must go to Candy, right, you're insisting that there is no choice, you must go to Candy. Same thing, you can say I have to go to Candy. If it's in the future, I have to go to Candy. Of course, you could say that in the past as well, I had to go to Candy. But in the future, I have to go to Candy. So have to there is a modal verb, right? And you could also say something about duty, that you like it's your obligation to do it. So for example, I should take care of my parents. I ought to take care of my parents. More like duty. These are things that it's morally good to do. You ought to study. Young people ought to learn as much as they can. Young people ought to try and change the country. Things like that, something to do with duty. So ought to, should, something to do with duty. And another very common thing is when you are not sure of something occurring, then you can say I may come, I might come. May, you can easily use the past tense form for that as well. I might come to the party. I might go to see the film. I will go to see the film is when you are definite, and when you are not definite, you can easily use might. I might go to see the see the film. I may go to see the film, right? And of course, may is a very famous word for asking permission in a question form. May I come in? May I leave now? So when we do the question form, we'll go to that. So again, possibility is expressed with may or might. Then there is ability, can. So I will play the violin is when you're already a performer and you're expressing something you will do. But if you say I can play the violin, you're saying that you're able to. You have the ability to do that. I can run fast. I can come tomorrow. It's not I can come tomorrow doesn't mean that you will come. But you're saying that there's a possibility you can actually do that. I can come tomorrow, right? I can make beautiful cakes. I can make beautiful cakes. I can play the piano. Things like that. So ability also comes to the modal verb section. So these you don't really have to get me to say, because you can go to Google and type modal verbs and the whole list will come. But should you want me to give you a list, obligation, things you should do, must, have to, need to. I need to leave now. I need to study or I will fail the exam. So obligation, duty, should, ought to. I ought to look after my parents. Ability, I can play the violin. Permission, you may go. You may talk to me. You may have your lunch. That is to give permission. Also, when you are not sure, probability, again you can say may. I may come tomorrow, right? So may can be used both for permission and probability. Just type, you know, your resources are all around you now because of the internet. You can go and just type modal verbs and the whole list will come. And also a word of warning, be careful of the websites that you choose, because it is possible that wrong information is given. So something like, you know, for for English grammar, maybe something like the British Council will be double checked by people who are trained to teach it, right? And there are good Sri Lankan websites as well. All right. So that's a modal verb, and all I have to do now is give you a poem for it. And this is a poem called Sea Fever by John Masefield. Not a very famous poem or poet, but when I read it when I was very young, I liked it because sea fever, it's written by somebody who loves the sea so much that he thinks it's like a fever, right? So sea fever, and just enjoy the poem because he starts by, every verse starts by saying, I must go down to the sea today. I must go down to the sea. So not that he will go, he should go, he ought to, but he must, because that is the calling of his heart. He loves the ocean so much that he must go. There is no choice. Okay. So just listen to the poem. It's not difficult to understand because after everything he gives a description of why he has to go, right? And the last thing is he talks about also, just like the journey that he will take on the sea, he wants to go through the journey of life also and have a quiet sleep at the end, like death at the end. So let me read that to you, and you can, on my side, you will see the words as well. Sea Fever, John Masefield. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and sky. And all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. And the wheels kick and the wind's song and the white sails shaking. And a grey mist on the sea's face and a grey dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day, and with the white clouds flying, and the flung spray and the blown spume, and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. Very nice, like very simple stuff. So he keeps saying, all I ask. So normally you preface with the phrase all I ask when it's a very simple thing that you ask. And he says all he asks is for the wind to come, for a companion who is always laughing, and just white clouds. It's a sailor's poem, and I chose this to explain the modal verbs simply because it tells that he doesn't have a choice. This is where he loves to go, right? And a very kind of a childish poem also I will leave you with, because it's written by a very famous poet for children, R.L. Stevenson. If you have done elocution and all that, this is a person who you would have memorized and recited at exams. So he normally writes for children, and this poem is called Bed in Summer, because when you in the West, during summer, the sun goes down very late. So the opposite happens in winter. The sun goes down very early, and even at 6 o'clock it's darkness. In the summer it's opposite, so that you're actually, if you have strict parents and you're a child, you have to go to sleep even when the sun is shining. And in this poem, this child says, it's not fair, because now he has to go to bed. So here the modal verb that I want to focus on is have to, and you will hear it when I tell the poem, when I recite the poem. Bed in summer. Robert Louis Stevenson. In winter, I get up at night and dress by yellow candlelight. In summer, quite the other way. I have to go to bed by day. I have to go to bed and see the birds still hopping on the tree, or hear the grown-up people's feet still going past me in the street. And does it not seem hard to you when all the sky is clear and blue? And I should like so much to play, to have to go to bed by day. Interesting poem, because it's mainly in the present simple tense, which we learned before. He said this is what normally happens during summer. I can hear people on the street, but I have to go to bed, right? And he says, don't you think it's fair that I should be, when I should like so much to play, I have to go to bed by day. So have to. I will go to see him. Definite. I have to go to see him when it's a compulsory thing that you have to do. Remember, these rules are not iron cast. You can easily use it for the present simple as well, right? So when I teach you verbs, I teach you what is normally done, but very easily. For example, this poem, the whole thing was more or less in the present, where he describes what normally happens in summer. Okay, so don't, it's always better to look at the context, the poem first, rather than the rule, because through immersion, just looking at it in context, you might understand a few things. So grammar teaching is always a bit risky, because students might feel these are strict rules that you can't change it. And very often in normal conversations, many things change, and there isn't this kind of very strict thing that you have to follow. The only way you will know what might be considered not non-standard is if you read a lot, if you listen a lot. That is why I keep telling you, read these poems, find other poems, listen to films, watch films, listen to songs, so that you can get immersed in the various ways of using this language. Thank you very much.